Many of you have come to know Surpass Adhesive as kind of a gold standard in adhesive dentistry. And this year, Surpass celebrates its 15th year anniversary. So we're here with Dr. John Kanka, the developer of Surpass, to kind of catch up on the history of Surpass, where it's come from, and then where we're going next. So Dr. Kanka, can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea of Surpass?
I had created the original 4th generation of bonding materials, which involved total etch, a primer, and then a bonding resin. And it worked really well, but the difficulty in that system was after you had etched and rinsed the tooth away, rinsed the etch away, you had to make sure the tooth was properly moist. And that was a difficult thing. Communicating that was a very difficult process. So what I wanted to do, knowing that the 4th generation of bonding materials has been described as the gold standard up to that point, that I would like to have a material that was really a 4th generation material but didn't involve any rinsing, any worrying about how dry or how wet the surface should be. So I wanted to create something I could place an etchant on the tooth that would properly etch it, but I didn't have to rinse it off, and I could just include it as part of the process, and then it would all come together and no one would have to worry about whether they're going to make the tooth properly wet or properly dry, because it was going to be there all right in place. And we actually did that. So we had Surpass 1 we created, and that's very novel. And then Surpass 1 is placed on the tooth, and then it's left wet, and then 3 brushfuls of 2 are dropped on top of that, and then it is dried thoroughly, and then you use the bonding resin, and you can apply that and make it as thin as you want it to be, and then you light activate it. So there is no discontinuity in the application of the material. There is no rinsing, there's no how dry, how wet, or anything. And I've always believed that to be a really, really incredible product.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of was foolproof, I guess, almost bulletproof.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Just you do it a couple times and you don't even have to think about it. And I have friends, I've talked about it with them, and they will just refuse to part with it, because it's not only easy for them if someone else is applying it, if it's an assistant who happens to be doing it, this is allowed, that even it's easy for them to do it as well.
Mm-hmm. So going back, it's a 3-bottle system. Do you see advantages or disadvantages? I mean, some doctors think 3 bottles, that's a lot. But
everything, I submit to you that everything is 3 bottles.
Yeah.
Everything.
So can you explain that?
Sure. Because if you look at the steps, you're going to need to acid etch the tooth.
Okay.
One way or the other. That's a bottle.
Yeah.
Then you have to do something, you have to rinse it. You have to either leave it wet or dry, or apply a desensitizer under there. That's another bottle.
All 2.
Now we have the bonding resin itself, the adhesive, and that's
All
placed
3.
on there.
Yeah.
So there really are 3 bottles in everything you do.
Yep. So it's not a disadvantage at all. Like you said, the bottle 1 conditions, and it will etch the enamel, correct? And then 2 primes, and then 3 is the actual adhesive.
Right.
So it's a very simple system.
It is. Surpass 1 has a pH of 0.6.
0.6.
So it does very, very effectively etch enamel.
And looking at it time-wise, even though it's a 3-bottle system, the way you described it, clinicians will actually save time using the 3 bottles than if they use maybe a more conventional system.
They actually will save time,
Yeah.
because it can be done in around 45 to 50 seconds.
And you don't need another activator if you use it. It's compatible with self.
It is compatible with all light
dual,
and self and dual cure systems.
Very cool. So that was 15 years ago. And at that point, do you remember it? Was that just like just a new paradigm of adhesives?
Well, what was happening at that time, we had begun to see self-etching. Well, we had self-etching materials, and then we're trending towards that all-in-one, which is a fallacy, because there's no material there's no 1-bottle system that's going to properly condition a tooth. It just doesn't happen. But I started to want to find something that I could somehow make it easier for everybody, and it started developing in 2004, and it became available in 2006. And I just, like I said, I didn't want to compromise in any fashion, and an absolute no compromise. And that's really what the material is a no compromise material.
So maybe for those that are watching, it'd be interesting. So that was developed as an Apex Dental Materials, like your shirt shows.
Right.
Since then, Apex has been acquired by Vista, and so now we have Vista Apex Dental Materials. In this new company, there's kind of been I guess the next progression of Surpass. Do you want to talk to us about that?
We have added, Vista Apex has added a bioactivity into the adhesive lines, into the restorative lines. And this is a significant jump. I believe, to me, this is a logarithmic jump in promise. And there is a version of Superb which we had developed, and that's Regen Universal. And now we also have Surpass in a bioactive line, and that's called Regen Self-Etch.
Self-Etch, yeah.
I'm not totally crazy about the name, but that's what it is. So when people see Regen Self-Etch, it is the bioactive version of Surpass.
Very cool. So Regen Self-Etch is built off the proven platform of Surpass, but now it has the advantages of bioactivity.
That's correct.
Could you address the bioactivity, what your thoughts are as far as bioactivity goes?
I think it's an enormous potential as when we start to put these materials into teeth, because they have the capacity to stimulate the formation of hydroxyapatite. They can close up margins, and the in vitro data is actually anti-caries. There is a significant anti-caries effect of the materials, which is just fabulous.
Yeah, because if we're going to place a restoration like a composite restoration, the thing that we have to worry about most typically is just that recurrent decay. And there's a chance that the Regen Self-Etch will help us prevent that reoccurrence of decay.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And then, we've all cut out restorations and seen adjacent restorations that are just staining along the cervical margins. And this is what I have in mind to try to prevent. That's the target, is to eliminate that. And again, it needs to be said that both the Regen Universal and the Regen Self-Etch, or the Surpass bioactive material, both of these should be used in concert with the Regen Flow, which is the bioactive flowable, because the two together are greater than each individually, and they act synergistically to magnify the effects, the bioactivity effects, and the in vitro anti-caries effect.
Yeah, it's amazing what the BioGlass is able to do, the way it can buffer the acidity around our restorative margins and yet attract calcium and phosphate. So if there is any kind of decay that begins, the tooth can kind of repair itself.
Right, and kind of just resist the adhesion of bacteria to it.
Yeah.
And that's, and again, as you mentioned, the alkaline nature of this, the release of alkaline ions into the system and the bodily fluids is a great aid to this. And like I said, I think this is just wonderful.
So we've gone from Surpass 15 years ago. Surpass has kind of morphed into Regen Self-Etch. And we're gonna have to see if it's another 15 years until there's the next progression.
If we're both here, Mike.
Yeah, I hope so. No, well, thank you very much for introducing Surpass to us 15 years ago, for working on the development. So now we've got a bioactive material, Regen Self-Etch, built on the Surpass proven platform. And we'll see what the future holds.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
You betcha.